sampling types have different methods, so you can choose your sample in different ways. So if you would like to have a sample, you can choose from different methods how you can choose your people in the sample. First grouping that we can talk about is the probability samples. So if you somehow made sure that everyone has the equal chance of getting into your sample, this is what we discussed, that doesn't happen often, then in this case you have a simple random method how you can collect answers. Well, this simple random means that you pick randomly. You pick people randomly from your population. You don't categorize them according to any characteristics. You just pick them randomly. You can have different methods here. You can choose every third, every fourth, every second person, or you can just randomly number them. It is totally up to you. And then we have a second type, which is the stratified sample. Well, this is like a two-step procedure. In the first step, you have the population itself, and then according to some characteristics, you might want to divide that population, and then you have two big subgroups, or three or four, depending on what characteristics you use. And once again, if you divided them, you still get some sample elements from them. So you define that from the first subgroup, I would like to get, 20%. From the second subgroup, I would like to get 50%. So it's like a stratified different steps that you have to take here. Okay, so, and the characteristics that you have here is definitely, totally depends on you. So you can yourself decide based on which elements you would like to distinguish them. Okay, the second grouping that we have to look at is the type of non-probability samples, because probability, as we mentioned, it might not happen that often, and for us, I think the non-probability samples are much more useful, because this is what we usually do. Unfortunately, we don't have access to everyone. So here we have three different types. The first one is the convenience sample. Well, convenience sample, as it is in its name, is usually used when you reach those people who are convenient to reach, meaning who are maybe in your circle of friends, circle of people you know, circle of acquaintances. So probability sampling is including those by accident who are in your sphere of knowledge, sphere of interest, so you can actually reach. We have the second type, which is the judgment sample. Then you choose, not randomly like in the first case, but you choose from the group of people you know, you choose with specific reasons or for specific reasons. So you choose some elements basically like in a hand-picked way that you want their specific opinion. So this way, you don't pick randomly, but maybe you know that those people know more of the topic that you are researching, or those people know less of the topic that you are researching, and that is why you are interested in their opinion. And there are some samples that probably you are familiar with. We have the snowball sample, meaning you ask some people, and then they tell their friends, and then they tell their friends, and it is going on and on and on, and you will have a bigger sample at the end. This is called the snowball sample. Okay, and the last type here is the quota non-probability sample. So the quota non-probability sample is when you pick how many people you need from certain groups or certain interest groups. Let's say I would like to research people's smartphone usage, and I'm interested in what people think, whether they are users of Apple iPhones or whether they are users of Samsung smartphones. Well, in this case, what I would do is I want both of them to be in my sample because I'm interested in the differences between them. Therefore, I would like to include half of my sample being Apple users and half of them being Samsung users. And in this way, I would be able to somehow see the differences between the results and to compare the differences in the results that they have. This is also good if you would like to get maybe opinion differences or differences in an opinion of people. Okay. Okay, and the last thing we need to discuss is sample size. Well, sample size could basically be, people always are asking me that, okay, which sample is the good sample, or how big is the good sample? Well, there is no answer for that, because the answer for that is it depends, and it entirely depends on your research. So whatever you're researching has its own characteristics, and I cannot tell you that 180 is the perfect sample size. It might not be. I cannot tell you that 50 is the perfect sample size. It cannot be told, so there is no specific number of good sample. What we usually say is if you have more than 100 answers, it means that you have a relatively big sample. We call it a relatively big sample because in this case, if you have more than 100, most statistical analysis could be done with this sample, even though we know that this might not be representative. So when you are writing your thesis and you are thinking about which statistical methods to use, and you remember your statistical knowledge that, but this is not representative, then can I make a test on it in SPSS? And the answer is, this is not representative, so you already know that the tests wouldn't be able, so you wouldn't be able to do the tests. But you can indicate in your research that yes, you are aware that the statistical tests could be done only if the sample is representative, but as you had a relatively large number of the responses, you wanted to check and you wanted to try if there are any connections between the data. So it is perfectly fine to do research on it with SPSS, but with the knowledge and with sharing it with your reader that yes, you know that the results are not representative, so the sample in this case doesn't reflect upon your population. So make sure that you write this down when you are dealing with this research and when you are analyzing your data. So a bigger sample is usually above 100 answers, and we call it a small sample if it's under 100. But of course, if you get something which is under 100, so if you get less than 100 answers, it is also worth looking at what people say. And maybe you have a topic where getting 50 answers is amazingly good. So that's why I'm saying that it totally depends on you, it totally depends on how it's done, it totally depends on your own research. So when people ask me that what is the good size for a sample, well, I cannot tell you an exact number. It totally depends on your research and your research aims. Okay guys, so this is what I wanted to tell you about sampling, because this is a topic that is quite connected to the questionnaire. So if you are, or when you are going to do your questionnaire, either for this class or for your thesis, make sure you go through these steps and make sure you know the difference between the probability and non-probability samples, because when we are reading your work, this is what we are looking for, that you know, even though your research is non-probability, doesn't matter, we know that it's gonna happen. What the thing is, what we are looking for is that you are aware of these differences or not. So bye guys, and see you next week.